The Canadian Grand Prix started in chaotic conditions with light drizzle falling over the circuit and teams divided on tire strategy before the race even began. McLaren took a huge gamble by putting Lando Norris on intermediate tires while most of the field stayed on slicks. Before the race could properly begin, an extra formation lap was called after the lights failed to go out, adding even more tension to an already unpredictable afternoon. When the race finally started, Norris made a brilliant launch and immediately jumped into the lead while the Mercedes drivers struggled for grip on the damp track. Kimi Antonelli moved into second place ahead of George Russell, while Lewis Hamilton settled into fourth and Oscar Piastri lost ground once again during the opening lap. Although Norris looked strong at first, the track began drying quickly and McLaren's risky strategy soon started falling apart. Antonelli rapidly closed the gap and overtook Norris for the lead, forcing McLaren to bring Norris into the pits only moments later. That handed control of the race to Mercedes, with Antonelli leading Russell and Hamilton close behind. The battle between the two Mercedes teammates quickly became the highlight of the race as Russell attacked aggressively to take the lead before Antonelli fought back almost immediately. The pair traded positions multiple times around the circuit, going wheel-to-wheel through corners and straights while barely avoiding contact. Russell repeatedly locked up under braking and made several mistakes under pressure, but each time he fought back to reclaim the lead before Antonelli launched another attack. Further behind, the race continued to produce non-stop drama. Max Verstappen passed Hamilton with a decisive move into turn 1, while several drivers struggled badly with grip as the conditions changed lap after lap. Oliver Behrman locked up heavily and lost positions. Pierre Gasly fought through the midfield, and Norris recovered back into the points after his early stop. Oscar Piastri's race became even more difficult after he made contact with Alex Albon during a late overtake attempt. The collision forced Albon out of the race and earned Piastri a 10-second time penalty, completely damaging his afternoon. At the front, the Mercedes fight became increasingly intense as Antonelli and Russell continued exchanging the lead in spectacular fashion. Antonelli constantly pressured Russell into mistakes through the damp sections of the circuit, and every lap looked as if the pair might collide. Eventually Russell pushed too hard, ran wide again, and suddenly slowed to a stop with a mechanical failure, retiring from the lead of the Grand Prix in heartbreaking fashion. Antonelli inherited first place and finally gained some breathing room while chaos continued behind him. Isaac Hadjar later received a penalty for aggressive defending against Charles Leclerc, while Lando Norris suffered a technical issue and retired after McLaren's gamble completely unraveled. Lewis Hamilton then produced one of the standout moments of the race by overtaking Verstappen in a brilliant move to take second place, sending the Montreal crowd into celebration. With clear air ahead, Antonelli controlled the closing stages perfectly and crossed the finish line to win the Canadian Grand Prix. The victory marked his fourth consecutive win and further extended his championship lead, while Hamilton secured his best result of the season in second place and Verstappen completed the podium after one of the most dramatic and action-packed races of the year. After the checkered flag, the emotions inside the Mercedes garage were completely mixed. On one side there was huge celebration as Kimi Antonelli secured another victory and strengthened his position at the top of the championship standings, but on the other side there was frustration and disappointment after George Russell retired while fighting for the win. Russell had looked fast enough to win the race and had traded the lead with Antonelli countless times throughout the afternoon, but the constant pressure, changing conditions, and repeated lockups eventually pushed him over the limit. His retirement became one of the biggest turning points of the race because until that moment the battle between the two Mercedes teammates had been almost impossible to separate. Antonelli's performance once again showed incredible maturity despite the chaos around him. Even while fighting wheel-to-wheel at extremely high speeds, he remained calm and patient, choosing the right moments to attack instead of forcing dangerous moves. Several times he backed out at the last second to avoid contact before finally completing decisive overtakes later in the lap. The young Mercedes driver looked fully in control during the closing stages once Russell dropped out, managing the conditions perfectly and avoiding the mistakes that caught out so many others throughout the race. Lewis Hamilton's drive also became one of the major stories of the weekend. Ferrari had not looked like the strongest team during qualifying, but Hamilton produced an aggressive and controlled performance during the race itself. His overtake on Max Verstappen for second place was one of the cleanest and most exciting moves of the afternoon, and it gave Ferrari their strongest result in several races. Hamilton's pace in the final stint showed clear improvement from Ferrari, especially in the tricky mixed conditions where tire management became critical. For McLaren, however, the race turned into a complete disaster after such a promising beginning. Their decision to start Norris on intermediate tires looked brilliant for only a few laps before the circuit dried out much faster than expected. Once Norris was forced into the pits, the team lost all track position, and things only became worse later, when Norris retired with a technical problem. Oscar Piastri also struggled throughout the race, and his penalty for contact with Alex Albon ruined any remaining chance of a strong finish. What started as a bold strategy gamble quickly became one of McLaren's most disappointing races of the season. Red Bull experienced a difficult afternoon as well. Verstappen showed strong pace early on and managed several aggressive overtakes, but the car never looked fully comfortable in the changing weather conditions. While he managed to stay near the front and secure a podium finish, Hamilton's late pass demonstrated that Red Bull no longer had the same dominant advantage they once enjoyed. The race also highlighted how competitive the field has become, with Mercedes, Ferrari, and McLaren all showing moments of speed throughout the weekend. The Canadian Grand Prix ultimately delivered everything Formula One fans could want: changing weather, strategy gambles, penalties, retirements, technical problems, dramatic overtakes, and an unforgettable fight for the lead. Antonelli left Montreal with another victory and an even bigger championship advantage, but the race also proved that the battle for wins is becoming more unpredictable with every weekend. As the celebrations continued after the race, many people inside the paddock began calling the Canadian Grand Prix one of the most entertaining races of the entire season. The non-stop lead changes between Antonelli and Russell had created an atmosphere that reminded fans of classic Formula One battles from previous eras, where drivers constantly pushed beyond the limit instead of simply managing tires and strategy. Every time it looked like one Mercedes driver had finally broken away, the other would immediately respond with another attack. The pressure between the teammates kept building lap after lap until Russell's retirement finally brought the fight to an end. Antonelli's latest victory also continued his incredible rise in Formula One. At such a young age, he already looked comfortable handling pressure situations that many experienced drivers struggle with. Winning 4 races in a row under completely different conditions showed that his success was no longer just about raw speed. In Canada, he proved he could manage changing weather, aggressive wheel-to-wheel battles, and championship pressure all in the same afternoon. The victory extended his lead in the standings even further and strengthened the belief that Mercedes may have found their next superstar for the future. For George Russell, however, the result was another painful missed opportunity in a season already filled with frustration. He had shown race-winning pace all weekend and looked capable of matching Antonelli move for move, but small errors kept creeping into his performance whenever the pressure increased. His repeated lockups and wide moments eventually became too much for the car to handle, and the mechanical failure that followed ended what could have been one of the greatest victories of his career. The disappointment on Russell's radio after retiring reflected just how much the result meant to him. The race also sparked major discussion about McLaren's strategy decisions. Starting Norris on intermediate tires had briefly made the team look brilliant when he surged into the lead at the start, but the gamble collapsed almost immediately once the circuit began drying. Some believed McLaren had taken an unnecessary risk too early in the race, while others argued they simply reacted to the unpredictable weather conditions and hoped for heavier rain that never arrived. Either way, the failed strategy became one of the defining moments of the Grand Prix and completely changed the direction of Norris's afternoon. Ferrari meanwhile left Canada feeling far more optimistic than they had in recent races. Hamilton's second-place finish gave the team an important boost, especially after struggling during qualifying. His late race pace against Verstappen showed that Ferrari's improvements were beginning to work, particularly in mixed conditions where confidence and tire control became critical. Charles Leclerc also showed flashes of speed despite getting caught in several midfield battles and traffic during the race. The aggressive racing throughout the field also led to multiple penalties and investigations, showing just how difficult the conditions were for the drivers. Several overtakes ended with lockups, near contact, or drivers